So before I take you inside, you'll notice that we have done the scaffolding because we are going to be doing a professional brick clean, all of the repointing, painting all of the masonry work, replacing any of the damaged ironmongery, as well as putting the asphalts on the step. When I purchased this property, the property had a sink fund with the freeholder. Because we enfranchised and bought the freehold with the other two leaseholders, we actually inherited that sink fund, which we can then use to improve the entire facade of the building. So it's really important to have a good solicitor in your pocket, which is why we utilize the best people at the PBK community to make sure that any deal you can see where there's those hidden gems and those little bonuses of where you can make money and improve your ROI. Now let's go inside. Now, in terms of works from when we were last here, we are now standing in the open plan kitchen living room area where we spent the majority of the money. You can see our steel framing where we've got the crank beam, so we're going to have the flat roof here and the pitched roof over here. All of our block work and our external brickwork has been completed. Last time we were just up to the DPC level. We've now completely finished the roof. We are semi-watertight, but we are waiting for the bifold doors and the bespoke fixed panel, as well as this bespoke aluminium door that's going to lead out to our internal courtyard. I really like this extension. One of the reasons is that we were able to match the brickwork really well to the existing bricks. We had some bricks that were delivered first. They weren't good enough. We sent them back. And I think it's those little bits of attention to detail, i.e. making sure you do get that color match with the bricks, with the period properties. Little things like having the outdoor lighting, the up and down lighters, which I think when we finish, is going to bring this garden together. In terms of finishing this garden, I'm thinking effectively to block pave the floors, to render the rear walls, and then to just add an additional picket fence over the top, just to add that extra layer of privacy and make sure it feels like a real nice private oasis. In terms of changes and deviations from plans, I'm actually quite proud to say there's not been too many on this project. We did choose to remove the chimney breast, did it quite well, so 3 additional steels in total, but they're pushed up into the joist. So the only thing you're going to see is the support beam underneath the actual chimney. We changed the sizes of the 2 skylights slightly just to work with where the steels were located. The thing I didn't really account for was the fact that I thought from the plans this post was going back and going to be inset inside the wall, so it was going to be flush. But with it not being flush, you've had to see how we can incorporate it and not make it look like an eyesore and make it more of a design. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the plasterboard out to just past here. We're going to put a piece of ply behind so you can have your TV at a raised level. And then we're going to bring this whole wall out up to here. But what we're going to do is we're going to inset some niches with lights in them so it looks like an overall part of the design. I'm not a massive fan of media walls at the moment, but I think it's a nice compromise that will work with the space. Normally, ideally, we would have wanted to plaster the entire property together, but in terms of just time frames and getting in and out as quickly as possible and on to the next project, we thought let's start at the front, which means realistically, we've already done the family bathroom, with the rear of the property to follow as soon as it's watertight with the brand new bifold doors and fixed panels and the aluminium bespoke door. So from last time, there are some areas where we have made some significant progress. The family bathroom with the setback niche, all of these shower fixtures and fittings coming out of the wall, and the wall hung toilet with a really nice feature wall. I think once this is all painted and the shower screens in, along with the large format mirror and the designer towel radiator, I think this is really going to be one of the selling points of the property. Overall, I'm really pleased with the progress thus far. We've finished the block and brickwork. We've also finished the roof for the rear extension. We've still got to wait for the glass balustrades to go in. We've still got to wait for our new bifold doors, fixed panels, and the skylights to go in, but they are going to be done by next week, so the site will be watertight. We've plastered 50% of the property. We've done 50% of the bathrooms. So although it's still a building site, a lot of progress has been completed. Now we're going to be back in 4 weeks. How far along do you think we're going to be with this project? Now, before I let you go, let me just talk about GDV and multiple exit strategy deals, because this is one of those. And the reason I like them is you have your worst case scenario. You have your bottom line, like, okay, if I don't get planning, if I don't get my license to alter, this is where I'm going to be. So now we purchased this property for just over £430,000. If we didn't get a license to alter, didn't get any planning permission, we could refurbish it as a 1-bedroom property and probably sell for around 550,000. Now, it's not a great deal. We would have spent the same amount of money, but we at least would have broken even. If your worst case scenario is you break even, you're in a pretty good place. Option number 2 was to refurbish it, but with a license to alter agreement from the freeholder. So consent to alter the fabric and the internal structure of the building to turn it from a 1 to a 2 bed. That would have increased the GDV to approximately 625,000. So 75,000 pounds more, and you probably only would have spent maybe an additional 10 or 15,000 pounds. Realistically, in that model, your profits would then be 50 to 60,000 pounds, which again, for second worst case scenario, isn't too bad. We then had the rear extension. I'm not going to do a deep dive into this, but effectively we did a side return, which was probably the most ostentatious planning we could have gone for and increased the space by the most amount. So effectively our footprint increased. And in the area where you're operating on price per square foot, if you add an extra 200 square foot to your property, and the price per square foot is £1,000 a square foot. Effectively, what you're adding is £200,000 worth of value. So if you can add £200,000 worth of value for only a £50,000 additional expense by doing the rear extension, effectively you're adding value by 4 times. So you're quadrupling the value of your investment on that specific element of the project. Now, we do work on worst case scenario. So we said, look, with the rear extension costing us maybe an extra 50,000, the GDV would go from 625 to 725. So a 1-to-1. But the reality is agents come in and are saying, look, at 825 square foot, you're probably looking at a price point of around 825,000, which will mean this property would achieve profits in excess of £200,000, which I think personally is an amazing deal. Obviously, we have to get there first because projected profits are exactly that. They're not real money. So come back to us at the end of this video when we're under offer, when we sold this property, when we can talk about how much this deal actually made.